Alright, so while we are going to design these two mobile screens by using the Figma Components feature, I want to first give you a bit of an overview. So what we are going to do is just here, I'm going to press F for frame shortcut on Figma. So I can create a frame and I'm going to name this as overview. So in order to understand what a component helps you to do on Figma, I want to go to the very basics. Now, what I want to first show you is how we can use a component to actually make our applications have much more flexibility, and we are going to do that with actually designing a button. So to zoom in, I'm going to press Shift 2, and I'm going to press again F for frame, and I am gonna fill this frame, and I'm gonna fill this with the color black, and I'm gonna zoom in a bit, and I'm gonna press T for text shortcut, and I'm gonna write sign up here, and I'm gonna auto width this, and then I am gonna move it to center, and I'm gonna give this a font size of 16 pixels. Perfect. Now, what we have here is now a normal button, and it's a frame right now, so it has pretty good qualities, such as it can have auto layout, it can have constraints. If we scale it, it will scale with it. The problem is usually when you are working on a production level application, you will have multiple screens, such as, let's press F, and I want iPhone 13 mini. You will have multiple screens such as this, and let's copy this as well. And you will have, and I'm copying the button by Control C, Control V here, Control V here, and you will have multiple buttons here. And one thing that will be very difficult is you will have 30 to 50 screens. Now, let's say we copied and pasted all of these buttons. We have the sign up, and at the end of the 50 screens, we decided that our button color will actually have to become red for all of our buttons. Now, that is a lot of work, because now what you have to do is you are gonna go here, you are gonna go change this, make it red, and gonna go to the second screen, gonna make this red as well, and this all adds up time. This is very inefficient, and this is actually costing you a lot of labor waste. And that is why Figma components are actually a great way to reduce this amount of labor waste by actually letting us create a master element. So I am going to actually make a copy of this button. And what I'm going to do is I am going to make this a component by pressing Ctrl-Alt-K. Now it's a component, and now it has some sort of a superpower where a component will have a master element. A master element is usually with these 4 rings outside it that will actually style all of its instances, meaning all of its copies. For example, let's drag a copy from this component, and you can see it doesn't have those rings on it. And this is the master. So what would happen if I change its color to, let's say, red? Now, when I make a change to the master, the child copies, meaning all the copies from the master will inherit what happened at the master's level. Any attribute you change on the master will actually cascade down to its children. Now, this is very beneficial again, because if we find out that we have these 2 screens, and we want, and let's delete these are the normal frames. Let's move this Ctrl-C. So these are all the children from the button component, the red button component we just created. And let's say we want the master to have the color blue. So this already saves us time when we realize you only need to make a change in one place, and it just goes to every other children it has. And the moment we are talking about a production level design with 30, 50, 100 screens, this is very beneficial. Now, is there other benefits to having components? Yes, there is. Components also lets you systematize your design. Now, another problem you have is if you have 50 screens, it might be very hard for you to remember which screens have that particular button. So not even just knowing that you have to change every button, but you have to actually know which buttons you have to change. It's not just making the change, it's knowing where to make the change. And that is very difficult because you have a lot of UI elements you are going to work with on production level, and it's very hard to keep everything in mind. But once you create a component, Figma actually stores your components for you. And let's name this instead of overview buttons. So now, if I go to instead of layers panel on the left side, follow my mouse, to the assets, Figma actually stores your components here, and this is very beneficial because it's self-organizational. It actually organizes it for you, and this lets you basically create a design system that is much more easier to use as a search or navigating and finding the things you need to make changes for. And again, you have to think these things in 50, 100 screen level. Right now we have only 2 or 3, and you might say, well, why do I need to have this button file? But you will have 25, you will have drop downs, you will have buttons, you will have pickers. All these UI elements will have their components, and it is much more easier to manage them once you make them a component, and Figma actually helps you with the organization. So one more thing I want to add before we actually finish this overview and get to implement what we have just learned. I want to show you what would happen if you were to, let's say, create a component and you are at the 25th screen of the 50, and you realize that you want the button to be red, but you are at the children level and you do not want to go and find this master frame and come to this here and make the change. What you can do is this. Let's say you come here and you want to pick green. Now, because this is a children, you can see other children or the master is not affected. But if you are actually editing a child and you want this to actually also edit the master and all the other children, you can right click and you can go main component, and then you can go push overrides to main component. So now it affects the master and its siblings. Alright, so before we actually go on to create these 2 mobile screens, we also need to learn about the variants. Now, what are variants? So we understand how the component can help us actually scale our application and keep it organized. But I know you have this question itching on you if you are actually thinking about this. Ahmed, if I have 50 screens and I have buttons with a single color, that is actually very hard for me to keep designing. What if I want 20 of screens to be black, 20 of them to be red, and 10 of those buttons to be blue? How does a component help me with that? Because if I'm making a change on a master component and all of its children adapt it, do I just keep creating other buttons such as sign up? So we would name this as in like button green, and we would name this as like and we would have to delete this, but you understand what I'm saying is in like we would get this one and we would make this one red, and we would actually make this a component again and name this button red. Like a production level design will have so many different types of buttons, not only with color but also with state, such as like, is it primary, is it secondary? When you have that component setup, it makes it actually pretty easy to organize and it reduces your effort, but components give you less of a flexibility in what to do because you have to abide by them. And that is why Figma actually created this concept called variants. So how you use a variant is, you actually go to a component and use a component to actually use a variant, and you click on this plus button, and that lets you actually create variants. And once you have a variant, you have to define what your property is for the attribute you are going to make a change. For example, we want a button that actually has the color blue, red, or green. What's the attribute we are making our decision of difference? It is color, right? Because all of these values, blue, green, red, are colors. So we are going to name the property color. And we are going to give this first one value green. And the second one value red. So what we can do now is we have to actually make this value different. We have to go here, make this a red. And now it's red. And maybe if you want, click on the variant plus button here, and maybe let's make this blue. So I'm gonna go here. Maybe this blue, yes. And this one's value is blue. So what is, no, with 1E. So what is the benefit of variant, you're asking? Let's say I am actually going to my assets again and buttons, and I'm gonna rename this as button color. Going to my assets, and I'm gonna fetch one of its children. Now Figma allows me to pick which variant of this component I picked. If I want red, I can pick red. If I want blue, I can pick blue. And this components with variants actually lets you create a very easy to scale applications. And we are going to use this especially on our application today on the navigation or in the each transaction instance here. And that's what we are going to do. So let's get cracking. Alright, so let's begin by actually creating our color system so that we can reference it in one place. I'm going to press F for frame, and I'm going to name this color palette. And again, if you do not understand what I'm doing by the color palettes or some of the shortcuts I'm using, and you are new to Figma, please click on that card info that is appearing on your screen on top right now. I have a Figma introduction tutorial that is an hour long to get the beginners like you started very easily on Figma, and I think that might help you to actually finish this video. So let's keep going. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press O for circle shortcut, maybe 148, and I'm gonna zoom in, and I'm gonna press I to actually pick its color, and I'm gonna pick the blue here, and I'm gonna to copy it with drag by holding Alt, and I'm gonna press I again, and I'm gonna pick a different blue here, which is that one, and I'm gonna drag this one as well. And is there a different color? I think the background is a bit different color, eh? So I'm gonna press I, and I'm gonna pick the background here, and I'm gonna arrange these in terms of the lightest in the left and the darkest in the right. And I think maybe that color might be a bit different, so I'm gonna have this here, drag the second one again, and press I, zoom in to see. Nope, I don't want that color. Maybe I again. That's a hard color to catch. And yeah, I think Figma is bugging out. I'm gonna Alt, press I, maybe press I here. Gonna zoom a bit with my magic pad. Yeah, that's the color. Okay, and we got it. And I think that's all the different colors that we have there, and we can begin. So these are the colors. I am going to name them. So I'm gonna name this blue 100, this one blue 200, this one blue 300, and this one blue 400. And these are the main colors we are going to use. I'm going to pick all of these 4 colors, press right click, plugins, and I'm going to pick my styler plugin to generate styles. Now, if you haven't heard of the plugin styles and you want to learn much more productive Figma plugins you can use, please click on that info card that is appearing on top of the video right now. I have a Figma plugin video that can actually give you these top 10 plugins I use that can actually help you become much more productive. But if you already know the plugin or you want to do it on your own, go ahead. And I think our colors are ready and we can now begin the design. Right, so let's get cracking. Now, I am looking at these 2 screens we are going to design, and because we will componentize them and then add some variants, what I'm asking myself is, what are the UI elements that are repeating in each screen? So that I can actually make the most repeated element components so I don't need to copy and paste throughout my whole design process. And one thing I realized that a UI element that will be on every screen is the bottom navigation bar here. Look at this one. I mean, not only will we have a bottom navigation bar, we will probably have different icons as in like different screens picked. So we will not only need to make this a component, but also a variant. The second thing that I believe is present in every screen is an instance of each of these transactions. They are in the first screen and also in the second screen here. Each transaction then later on becomes this, I believe, frame in the design. And that actually shows the user, our imaginary user, how much money they spent this month, etc., etc. Now, one more variant and component we can have is actually the card. So while in this two screens that we are going to design, we don't see any other variation of the credit card. In actual application, we would have different colors. Normally a user has multiple credit cards, so it makes sense to create a variant just in case so that we can also get good practice. And those are the 3 components and variants we are going to design today: the cards, the transaction, and the bottom navigation. So let's begin by the bottom navigation. So I'm going to press F to create a frame for a shortcut, and I'm going to name this bottom navigation. And what I'm going to do is I am going to press F again to create my frame, and I'm gonna get this 48 pixels. I'm gonna click the frame, press Shift 2 to zoom in, and gonna pick its color to be light blue, and I'm gonna give this, because I am looking at the design and it's circular, I know the border radius is going to be half of its height, which is 24, and boom. I believe the width of it is less than 288. It might be like maybe 240. I'm gonna check. It's 232. But what I want to make sure also is that we got the color correct. I believe we will have it at 200 is the key here. Yeah, 200 is a bit darker because the card is the 100 and this is the 200. And then I want us to have our icons. Now for us to have our icons, I am also going to create a frame for them. Press F and icon set. And what I'm going to do here is that I am going to go press right click, plugins, and I'm going to use feather icons. Now I am going to press this icon for statistics, and I'm going to look for user, and I think I'm going to look for home. Now feather icons is a very popular plugin. If you have never used it, you can go to here, community, and write feather icons, and if you click plugin here, you can install it right here. And once you do, come back to here, and in here I am gonna actually move all these icons in. the icon set frame, and I'm gonna move them apart, right? Like I'm gonna pick each, move them here and there. And I think we are lacking also two icons for the second screen, which are the chevron right and left. So I'm gonna add those as well. So I'm gonna go here, again, right click, plugins, and I'm gonna look for feather icons, chevron left, and chevron right. That is fantastic. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I am gonna make a component out of each of these icons. Shift to zoom in. I'm gonna press Ctrl Alt K, Ctrl Alt K, Ctrl Alt K, Ctrl Alt K, and Ctrl Alt K. And I'm gonna move the chevron left inside the icons as well. Okay, so we have yeah. Okay, I think that is pretty good. So all of our icons are now componentized. What that means is if we go to assets and we go to icon set, they are now there and they are much more easier to fetch. So I'm gonna go to here, our bottom navigation, click the frame and rename it as bottom nav. And while clicking it, I'm gonna go to assets and I'm gonna move home. I'm gonna move the activity and I'm gonna move the user. Now, once I do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add first of all, I'm gonna select all of these three icons and I'm gonna pick their color to be white. And then I am gonna add a auto layout to actually this frame so I can basically pick the margins between each element but also the whole frame. Now if you never used an auto layout before, I have a video for you that is showing right now on top of this video if you need help to go deeper in it. If you are already comfortable with it, it's actually a very useful tool and it is very good for you to use it when you are spacing or aligning things. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna center these and I'm gonna give them maybe 36 pixels of difference and I am gonna give them maybe 48 each. Yes, that looks pretty good. Maybe too much spacing and not enough on top, so 12 by 12. Yes, that's better. That's 240. That's 232, close enough. I think that works. So once we have our frame done, we are gonna make this a component by pressing Ctrl Alt K. And now that it's a component, we can actually make it a variant by pressing this plus icon. All right. So what I want to do is now, I want to ask ourselves, what is the value change going to be in each variant for the bottom navigation? And the change will be the picked icon. In here we have the icon home picked, in here we have the statistics, and in here we have the user profile. So what that means is our property is going to be, let's say, picked screen. And I am gonna add here a very good pen. Oops. Okay, one moment. Maybe L. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to actually let me think. All right, the problem is we are not able to have this line at the bottom of the home because what our auto layout is trying to do is it's trying to add it to the side by side. So what we need to do then is to actually group these 3 icons and make these a frame and make them icons. So, and I'm gonna remove the second variant for now. And here what we can do is we can remove the auto layout from the parent frame, and in the icons we can add a, actually we don't even need to add an auto layout, it's already, the distance is styled. So what we can do now is we can actually press P for pen, and we can draw that line, and I'm gonna make this stroke 2 to match the icon stroke size, make this F, and I am gonna get this to be down maybe 47 and just a bit left. Yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. And that is the first variation. Now in the second variation, I want this to be moving to the right. I'm pressing Shift while using my upper key, like the upper chevron in my keyboard. And that lets me easily switch 10 pixels instead of 1 pixels for changing the coordinates. And then I'm gonna press plus again. And then I'm going to do the same, gonna come to X, Shift upper keystroke, up keystroke, yes. And now this first one's value is gonna be home. The second one will be transactions, and the third one will be profile. And that is our bottom navigation, guys. So let's go and create the transaction component, and I'm gonna actually press the screen, press Shift 2. So what do we need in a transaction component? What I'm trying to find out is it's the UI design here. On the left side, we will have a company logo. And on for the content, top left is the company label, company title. On the bottom left, what we have is the date that the transaction occurs. Then on the top right, we have the amount of the expenditure. And on the bottom right, we have the exact timing when the transaction occurred. Now, what this means to me is when I'm going to create this transaction variant, I know one of the dependencies we have to create first is creating the logos, because each transaction, as you can see here, have the logos, and right now these company logos, and we do not have access to them. So what I'm gonna do first is that I'm gonna press F for frame shortcut, and I'm gonna create this frame. I'm gonna title it company logos, and inside here I am gonna insert a few of those. So I'm gonna press Shift 2, right click, and I'm gonna go to my plugin logo creator. You can install this also in the community, just like we did the Unsplash logo creator. And I'm gonna fetch the 4 company logos that we use. I'm gonna press standard collection, and I am going to, let's see what we have here. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Now, all of these are now fetched. Now what you can see is they are actually a lot bigger than what they were in our screen. So where did the last one go? Let's get it inside here too. So one thing I want to do is I definitely want to resize them, and I want them to have the same height. Right now they look a bit awkward side by side. So I'm gonna hold Shift so I can select all of these logos, and I'm gonna lock the aspect ratio, and I'm gonna press 36 pixels, and I'm gonna actually make them all line up, and I am gonna distribute vertical. Yes, that looks better. Now another thing we need to do is, if you look at the screen, they are also surrounded by that circle shape. So while the logo is 36 pixels in terms of its height, its surrounding circle is 60 to 60. So I'm gonna add that surrounding circle for each of the logos here. Press O, draw that circle, 60, 60, and I'm gonna come here, and I'm gonna select the circle and the logo. I'm gonna center them, and I'm gonna move the logo above the circle. And yes, and now they are centered. I'm gonna then press I to pick the color of the circle, and I'm gonna select the color of the company logo, and then I'm gonna darken it just a bit. Yes, that works. Now I'm not gonna go through and get the same colors for each of the element. That's not my goal, but I want you to see how I'm picking the colors to actually make the company logos color much more visually attractive. I am just picking the same color and I'm darkening it so that the lighter color pops up. And I am then gonna press, I'm gonna use shift to select both the circle and the company logo, and I'm gonna frame these by Control Alt G, and I'm gonna say company logo 1, and I'm gonna make this a component. Now then I'm gonna do this for other 3. So, and because this is an intricate step, I cannot fast forward in the video, but I'm gonna go here, 60 pixels, 60 pixels. I'm gonna select both of them, center them, move the logo above the ellipse, move the logo above the ellipse, that's correct. And now why is this not visible? Yes, now it is. I'm gonna click the circle, press I to pick its color, gonna pick that green, and then gonna darken it. So I'm gonna go to HSB, and I am gonna darken this. Yeah, that I think fits pretty good. So I'm gonna just do this for the remaining 2 now, but first let's actually make these guys a frame, Control Alt G, and we will write here company logo 2, and I'm gonna component these now with Control Alt K. Perfect. Onward to the third one, press O, 60 pixels, 60 pixels, and then I am gonna move the logo up and select both of them, center vertically, center horizontally, and then I'm gonna press the circle to pick its color, then press I for the eyedropper, and I'm gonna pick a color around here. And then I'm gonna, just like the other 2, I'm gonna darken this color. Around here is good, I think. It makes it visible. And then I'm gonna go here. But before I go, I'm gonna first frame these, Control Alt G, company logo 3, and I'm gonna for componentize these, I'm gonna do my shortcut of Component Alt K, which you should be familiar by now. And now we are on the last logo. Press O for circle shortcut, 60 by 60. I am gonna move the logo above, select both of them, center, and then I'm gonna select the circle, press the I for the eyedropper tool, gonna pick an orange shade, and I'm gonna move this here. Now this one is tough because it has multiple colors in it. Maybe we wanna pick a shade around here, then darken it. Yeah, this one doesn't look so bad. Maybe we can try the edge for the orange. Nope, I'm definitely a fan of the red one. Yeah, around here is good. And then we are gonna make this a frame, then a component. So G, company logo 4, and then Control Alt K. for the component. That's cool. And now on our assets panel, company logos will be able, we can fetch them very easily, and that's good. So let's move company logos to down here. And what we can do now is that we can create a transaction card. So I'm going to press F for frame. Go here, write transaction details. Transaction maybe card. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to fetch one of our logos. So I'm going to fetch let's say the second one. And then I can go here. I can zoom out a bit. Press T for title. And company, let's say X software. I'm gonna press the auto width so that the title is on one line. And I think I want this to be 16 pixels. And I'm pressing Alt to copy and drag. And I'm gonna do, let's say, June 11. Okay, so June 11. And I want the background color of the transaction card to be darker because we are gonna use a white font. So I'm actually gonna get this color to be almost black or gray. Okay. So we are gonna pick for both of these FFF. All right, they are whitened. And now while the X software is the header, the June 11 is almost like a secondary text, so it should be 2 pixels smaller. That's good. And then I'm gonna drag the X software, as this is gonna be our pricing, so it should be like 102 and 48. And then I'm gonna drag X software down as well, and 2:43 p.m. Ooh, and this will be 2:43 p.m. Yes, and this should also be a secondary text, so 14 pixels, and lovely. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of these elements, and I'm gonna put them on a frame by Ctrl-Alt-G. And I am going to name this transaction. Then I'm gonna press for the X software and the expenditure to make these a frame as well. And you are gonna understand my reasoning in just a minute. And I'm gonna write this first row. And for this one as well, second row. I'm like, okay. Now, and then I'm gonna also frame these together. Content. Now, why am I framing these? Because I'm gonna use auto layout and I want spacing at different points of this card. I want spacing around the whole content. I want spacing between the logo and the content, the text between, and I want also spacing between the header and expenditure, and I also want vertical space. It is impossible to achieve this with one auto layout, so I had to make each row of content an auto layout, but also to separate the image between content, I had to make the content also a frame. So now what we can do is we can add an auto layout here, and we can center these. So this auto layout actually picks the margins between this element and this element. So I'm gonna make this like 16 pixels. And I'm then gonna go to my row here. And then I'm going to actually go to my content. And I want this to be maybe 12. Nope, 12 is too much, maybe 8. And then what I want is, I want this to be bolded. So Control B. And I want this to be at the, so I want these two texts to be at the right end. So one thing we can do is we want to check the width of this. This is 314 pixels. And this one is 344 pixels. So we should have actually a bit more margin between each of these texts. So let's do that. My mistake. So I'm gonna go to each row now. Each row and maybe get this to be holding shift. Maybe 94. Yeah, 94 might work. Let's see the total width here. That is 344, which was, yes, 344. So we just need to meet the end of this. So we just need to increase it just a bit more. Gonna pick the row and just gonna get it around here. Yes, that is at the end. And I'm gonna do the same, maybe a bit more. 145, 155. Yes, I think that is great. I think that works pretty good. I think that looks pretty good. I think our font weights might be a bit off. So I'm gonna go to the original copy and I'm like, okay, so X software is maybe medium. Yes. And again, how I'm deciding what to bold is the most important element is the expenditure. So that is the most bolded one. Then we can make this a medium. And this is the secondary text is less important. That's why they are smaller and they have less font weight. And now that the spacing and the margin is done, I'm gonna make this a component so I can create a variance of it. So I'm gonna press Ctrl Alt K. And then I am going to press plus for variants. And that looks pretty good. I am definitely gonna get rid of that company logo. Gonna go to my assets, close the buttons, and I'm gonna put this around here. Go to my layers, and I'm definitely gonna put this around here. And that's a mistake. I'm gonna, yes, that is how you do it. Gonna press 2 again, and one more. And I'm gonna repeat the same process. Just gonna remove the company logo. Remove the company logo. Just put one in. And put one in. Go to layers. And just gonna put it in the right space on the left top here. And put it around there. Put it above content. And then just move it to the left. And that looks pretty good, actually. And then I'm gonna rename certain things. I might change the numbers here a bit. Maybe 105, 48, 103, 101. And if we ever forget something, we can always come back to these variants because you only need to make a change in once. So I'm just gonna call this is already a long video. I'm just gonna call this done. And if at the point of designing the first or second screen, we realize there's a mistake, because these are now components, we can just go to the master elements, make a change once, and it will cascade. All right. So I think what we now need to do is set their properties. So while we have added all the variations, we haven't set the property. And we are going to ask the same question we asked for each variant we created so far. And the question is, what attribute do we use to actually separate the two variants? And in this case, it will be the company name, really. So it will be property is company name. Or we can just say company. And then what we can do is, and again, in an actual, in an actual production design, it wouldn't be company, because you can actually spend your money on the company by having 2 transactions in different days, and you can have like X software transaction occurred on June 11th and then June 8th. So company wouldn't just be enough. But let's say for our sake it is enough. Or if it's not, what we can do is we can even do it by date or something else, or we can do it by transaction number right now. So that might also be one way to do it. But because it's a bit hard to gauge what can be further down the line because we are not developing something to production level, let's just wing it for now and make mistakes and see what we can learn. So I'm going to name it company. And I'm going to go here. And I'm going to name this X software. And I'm going to go here and look at these. Okay, so this one is Rocket Software. I did not know that. And let me go here and Meteor and Sandal. Okay. So this one looks like a Meteor for me, for the past version of me. Meteor Software. And this one is Sandal. That does not look like Sandal at all. That's a very odd looking sandal. Okay. So these are the four. So let's go to each and make their value. This is X software. This is, let's actually name them. So this one would be X. I'm just gonna, software is too long. We wouldn't be able to read it. Then this one, the third one is Sandal. The fourth one is Rocket. And voila, that's our transaction card. Alright guys, so in the next video, what we are gonna do is we are gonna create the variants for the cards, and then we will begin. Alright, so let's begin designing our card variant that is here. And again, for this tutorial's sake, we only have one color for our card variant, but if this was a production design, we would probably have different cards because a person, a user, probably has multiple cards. And also it gives us good practice to use the features that we learned, such as components and Figma variants. So let's press F for a frame shortcut, and let's name this credit cards. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F again, and that will be the area for where my credit card will go. But first, let's change the color of this credit card frame to match this one. That's better. And I'm gonna give this the bordering radius of 8 pixels, maybe 16 even. 8 might be too small. And I'm gonna give this a fill color of light blue. That looks pretty good. And then I am going to zoom in. So I'm gonna look at what a credit card needs. So it needs a, on the top left, it has a total balance that it has right now. Then on the second row, what we have is the credit card number, following the last four being the basically like passcode. So you can have it this way. What you can also have is that the first 12 would be actually not available, and then the last four would show as number. You can have that way as well. That way would probably be more secure because you can always guess. Like, this is probably less secure, so we can change that. And then we have the expire date. Then we have the basically the branding, the master one. Okay, so let's do those. So I'm gonna just zoom out. Gonna come here, click on my credit card frame, and I'm gonna name this credit card. And I'm gonna press T for text shortcut. That's 1322, let's say 48. And we wanna make this probably 18 pixels, auto width, Control B for bold. And that looks pretty good. And I'm pressing Alt to actually drag and copy. And this would be the number, but like I said, I want to have the first 12 as like not showing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press O, and I'm gonna shift 2 to zoom in, and I'm gonna press O, and I'm gonna make this a 4 pixel 4. That's good. maybe 5. My bad, maybe 5. Yes, that looks better. And then we want to get the color of white. So the text color there. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to drag this. And yes, then I'm going to pick all of these together. These 4 together. And gonna make these a group by pressing Ctrl G. And I'm gonna then drag the whole group here. That's good. I'm gonna do the same again. And that's good. And at the end, we will have so maybe each group will have to be 4 pixels instead of 2, because the groups should be farther apart than each member. I'm gonna check the distance. Oops, my bad. And I'm gonna move these. Yes, that looks better. And then this is gonna be like 7, 8, 4, 5. And it's definitely gonna be less bigger and no. Yes, that's better. Maybe, yes, that looks way better. I like it. And then I'm gonna drag the text here, the last 4 digits, and I'm gonna write 0728. That's a long expiry date, by the way. That's good. And then I'm gonna create our Visa or MasterCard icon. I don't remember which. I'm gonna press O. And I'm gonna make this 20 pixels. And then I'm gonna also drag it. This is also 20. And they will intersect, right? So I'm gonna go and pick a reddish color. Let me remember the colors because I don't remember how they looked. Okay, reddish to orange, and their intersection is between those 2 colors. And then I'm gonna pick an orange color around here, lighter, yes. And this would be their intersection. I'm gonna press Alt to drag both of those selections, and I'm gonna basically do intersect selection. And I'm gonna make this a color between the red and the orange. I'm basically gonna make it lighter here. Yes, that would work. Maybe a bit more red. Maybe, yes, that works better. And I think that's our card. So I'm gonna basically name this brand, and that works like a charm. Zoom out. And I'm gonna keep this brand icon for all the variants because I just don't want to design other brands. They would be a bit hard. And now what I'm realizing is this credit card we have has too much of a height, I believe, compared to our actual credit card. So actually that is not true. This is high. Oh, because the width is not long enough. Okay, so we gotta go further. But what we can do is we can actually give an auto layout for this, and we definitely don't want to do that yet because we want to pick all of these circles, each of them, and this number, and then frame this as credit num, and this is the expiry date. And yes, so how about we do it, and we have to also make these a frame, and these would be the expiry and brand. And then I can do an auto layout here. And what I'm looking for is maybe I am looking for 16 pixels. And I want the width to be bigger. Maybe around, so 375. So let's check the width that we had. So it's 343. So I want my width to be 343. And then what I want to do is I want to set my bottom, left, and right to be 16, and each element to be 12. That's good. And then what I want is I really, maybe even 24, maybe 20 for a bit bigger. Let's see. And I want this expiry and brand frame to extend so that the MasterCard can be at the edge of that it can be. So I want this to be maybe 230. So let's check the distance. It got too long. So I'm gonna actually extend this. I don't want this to be, I want this to be around 307, and I want it to have an auto layout, and I want this to be space between, and I want to extend this to 307. Yes, and that works pretty good. I'm checking the margins. Yeah, that works pretty good. I'm just gonna check if I forgot anything. I don't think so. I think maybe this can be a bit bigger in terms of expenditure, so we can get this to be 20. But it still looks, yes, I think that is just a few pixels away, but it looks pretty good. And I'm gonna keep it that way. Maybe this can be a bit, no, it's 14 pixels is pretty good for mobile. So then I'm gonna actually componentize this with Ctrl-Alt-K. And then I'm gonna add a variant. And each variant can be a different color. So I'm gonna check. And our darkest color is our background color, so we definitely won't have that. But we can have 200 and 300 of blue to actually see how it looks. So we can have blue 200 for this one, and we can have blue 300 for this one. Okay, so and we are going to ask the same question: what is the attribute that we are actually making a differentiation between each variant? And that would be color. So property will be color, and this would be blue 100. This would be blue 200, and this would be blue 300. And voila, and we will name this credit cards. Ooh. Alright, so let's begin designing our first screen, which is the home screen here. I'm gonna press F, and then I'm gonna pick iPhone 13 mini from the right side, and I'm gonna give it a border radius of 32 pixels. And then what I'm going to do is I am gonna give it a color of the 400 so that it matches the color we have there. And then I am looking at what we have on the home screen here. So we already have the card variant and the each transaction. What we also the bottom navigation, what we don't have is these subheader and the initial header hello Duncan with the profile image. So I'm going to press T for text. I'm going to write hello Duncan. And I'm definitely want to make this auto width. And then I'm going to press O for the profile image background. I'm going to make this 48 pixels. I'm going to select my screen, Shift 2 to zoom in. And I'm going to select this circle that I just created. Right click, plugins, and I'm going to go for the user profile plugin. And again, this is a good plugin to insert some user profiles. And if you want to learn more, you can always check my plugins video where I can show you the most Figma plugins I use that I believe will help you as a designer. You can click top right now. And I'm going here and I'm just going to insert a random photo. And that's fine. That totally looks like a Duncan. And then what I am going to do is I'm going to add the comma there. Add the comma there, that's good. And then I'm gonna add my card there. So I'm gonna name this home screen first. And then I'm gonna go to assets and begin using our variants. I'm gonna add the credit card first. And that looks pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is I am gonna add the second sub header here, transaction details. I'm gonna auto-vid it and I'm gonna make this maybe 18 pixels. So maybe 18, maybe 16 pixels, but bold. And then I'm gonna press it and press Alt to duplicate. I'm gonna write view all. I'm gonna do, as this is a secondary button, I'm gonna unbold it and I am gonna decrease its font size by 2. That's good. I'm not gonna worry about alignment yet. I'm just trying to add as many elements that we have here. And then I can have the bottom navigation. So I can go here, fetch my bottom navigation, boom, and let's see. So maybe around there is good. Maybe 10 pixels more up. Yes, that looks pretty good. Then we will have each transaction. And for that, what I'm gonna do is I am gonna move my profile to the right side and I'm gonna add my transaction cards. Now, before we go further, I want us to actually do something for the screen. We want to add a layout grid. For us to actually understand a sense of vertical and horizontal alignment, right now the grids will help a lot. So I'm gonna create a layout grid. And I'm gonna make this a column 5. I want each margin to be 16 pixels left and right. Gutters to be as well, and probably 20% so I can see them. Okay. So I want each of these to start here. I'm pressing Shift down key. And I'm gonna get you to here. Let's see if that touches. It does. All right, now it does. So that's good. This has to come back. Let's clean up a bit. And awesome. So that's our first company. We can get the other ones. So I'm going to just press Alt and Shift to hold the alignment. And I'm going to do it again and again. And I'm going to name each of these differently, such as I can go and make Meteor, Sandal, Rocket, and I probably want to get these to have different dates. Probably the most recent one will be at the top, so we really want to design according to those. June 9, June 8. Yes, that's pretty good. And I am gonna also center these two headers there. Yep. And I think I want to underline the secondary tertiary button. So I'm gonna move my profile here. That looks better. My alignment looks better, that's for sure. And now what I'm gonna do is, because I wanna make the spacing between each of these transactions equal, I'm selecting all of them by holding Shift. I'm gonna frame these 4. And I'm gonna write this to be transactions. Write the transactions, and I'm gonna add the auto layout, maybe 24 pixels, and I want these to be also framed. This is transaction subheader, and I'm gonna check my distance here. I want this to be maybe 32 pixels. That's good. I want this to be 32 pixels as well, so 4. Yep, so that's good. That can also be 32 pixels, so I'm gonna select both, maybe 1 pixel down to make the 32 pixels here, 32 here to the top, to the bottom, 32 pixels to the bottom. That's also good. And I think we can add one more here. So I'm just gonna go to our last one, and I'm gonna Alt and drag, and I'm gonna carry our, yep, that's good. And I'm gonna make this maybe, let's say which company. We can make this a Meteor company, and we can make this June 7. And I think our spacing here, let's see if it's equal. That's not equal at all. So yeah, because it did not put it in the right place. Okay, so it did not put it in the same frame, so I'm gonna put it here, and boom, now it's correctly spaced. And Control G, sorry. And I wanna hide the show layout, so I'm gonna press Alt Shift 4, nope, Control Shift 4 to actually hide. My bad, guys. Control Shift 4 to show and hide the layouts. I'm on Windows, so it's a bit different than Mac. And that looks pretty good actually in terms of design. I think we have a bit of a alignment issue. Let's see, Control Alt 4 again. No, our alignment is actually spot on. I think we are pretty good. Alright, so let's move onward by designing our filters here. So if you look at our second screen, the transactions, you can say we can pick the cards we have, and if we pick card, we can see the whole transactions that we did on each card. So this is card 1, we could have picked the card 2 and card 3. So we will have basically a card filter UI element that will probably have two states. Either it is chosen or not chosen. So let's go by actually pressing on our shortcut F for frame. And that is small, so let's make this bigger. And let's name this filter, let's say filters. And I'm gonna press I to pick a color. I'm gonna darken this as well. And I'm gonna press F again. And I am gonna create this small frame, and inside I'm gonna place a text called card 1. I'm gonna auto vid it, and I am gonna look at the frame, maybe make it bigger a bit, and I am going to actually create an auto layout for this, and I am going to give this maybe, that's a bit too much, maybe less, maybe 8. That gives me to 35, that's okay, and maybe 18 pixels, and we wanna fill this with the, let's say, the chosen one, and that is too small, so maybe we want this to be 16 on the left side, 16 on the right side. That's a bit better. So then what I want to do is, so this is our chosen one. I want to make this a Control-Alt-K to make it a component, and I'm going to name this filter, and I'm going to add the variants for it, and I'm going to add one more, yes. So actually we only need 2. So this one is the chosen one. How does the unchosen one look like? I think it looks somewhere around the 300, and the font is 200. No, font is 100. I think it looks something like this, and this means that it's not chosen. Let's just take a look here. Okay, no, it's 200 to 200. Okay, so it's not this dark, so maybe it is this, yes. That is how it is. Okay, so the first one is the, so, and again, what is the attribute we are differentiating? It is if a filter is picked, it looks like this. If it's not, it looks like the second one. So our property is named is picked, and the first one will have the value of yes, and the second one will have the value of no, and that is our filters. And now that we are done with the filters, we can go and design our second screen. Alright, so let's go on and create the last screen. I'm gonna press F on my Figma, so I can press iPhone 13 mini. Actually, I'm gonna copy and paste the home screen first. So I'm gonna copy and paste here. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick my bottom navigation, and I'm gonna select its variance value to be transaction, because we're at the transaction screen now. And then I'm gonna delete the card, and I'm gonna delete the transactions, and I'm gonna name this all transactions. Then what I am actually going to do is I'm going to delete this one as well. I'm going to look at what we are trying to do. We have a filters frame first. So we have 3 options for the cards, and then we have a chart. Now I want to finish the chart first, which is the most difficult part of this screen. So for the chart, we are going to use a plugin. So I want you to go to home screen here, and then make sure you are at the community. I want you to write chart, and I want you to actually install this plugin by Pavel Kulugin and come back so that you can actually press F to create the frame that the chart will rest in. And I think it has a width of 288 pixels. So I'm going to give it 288. I'm going to give its height to be 288 as well. I'm going to right click and make sure you create the frame first, because otherwise the chart will take the whole screen, which we don't want that. Go to chart plugin and press create chart. And I want 5. Yep, that's okay. Maybe 4. Number of points. And create chart. Okay, so this is our chart. And I want this to be roughly, well, let's first see. I do not want any of these like these lines that we have. So I'm going to remove all of them. I'm not interested in those. And for the remaining, I'm going to check, and I want to make sure this is 288 and 288, and that's good. And then what I want to do is here, I want to make sure I rename this as week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. All of these are Roboto right now, so I want to make sure that they are Inter first. So their font family will be Inter, and they will be AutoWidth, and they will be white. Same goes for all these values here. I'm gonna make them white and Inter and AutoWidth. That makes them look better. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and I want to make sure this line has the color of white, blue, and maybe for each of the markers we can do maybe 200. Yeah, maybe white would be even better. So how about we go white? Yes, that does look better. So, and again, that is different than our chart, because we sometimes get randoms and we might make a mistake. So sometimes we get a different look and it's randomized, so I don't know which ones we are gonna get, but that looks good in terms of a chart. And then what I wanna do is I want to make sure that this is aligned properly. So we want to get this to center. So that should be 41, 40, yep, maybe 40.5. And that is centered now. Now what I can do is I can move this a bit down, and I'm gonna add my card filters now. So I have to go to assets, and I'm gonna move my profile here. I'm gonna press home, and I'm gonna move my filter here. And we will have 3 filters, so I'm gonna duplicate here. And the second and the third one will be not picked because they are not chosen. And I'm gonna zoom in with Shift 0. And then I'm gonna make the value of the second filter card 2. The third one's value to be card 3. And I'm gonna then basically align these. And I want spacing, and I want this to be 16 pixels. And I wanna also Ctrl-G and filters. And I want to center these. So let's see, that's 48. And that is good for me. Yeah, I think that is good. Then we will have total balance, T, total balance. And I'm gonna drag it for the balance number. I'm gonna copy from the Control-C from the home screen, paste it here, and I'm gonna paste it. I think we want to increase this a bit, so maybe 28, as this is the most important number in the screen. I'm gonna check the distance, maybe 121, yeah, that works. This should be 136. Yep. And then what I am going to do is I am gonna add our transactions from the left side here. I'm gonna Control-C and Control-V here, but I'm gonna delete the last two. And I am gonna put them here, reduce its height, the frame, to match the last logo height here. And maybe let's look at our spacing here. So I'm gonna check the spacing. That is pretty good. Maybe one more pixel up. So we have the match here. Shift R to check with our ruler. Yep, that's pretty good. And let's check the margin between these two. Maybe 24. 1, 2, 3. 24. These should definitely come way more up. 22, maybe 24. And between each other, they shouldn't have that much. So I'm gonna zoom in, and spacing between text is more different because even if you're at auto vid, you will never have the exact height match the line height of the text. So has 4 pixels below, this has 8 pixels up, that's 12 added, and between each other they have 5, that's 17, maybe one more pixel up, 16. Yep, that looks pretty good. And then these should have 24. So I'm gonna go here between these, all of these. That's 24. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe 8 pixels less. Yes, that should be 32. And bottom navigation should be above this element. So I am gonna go pick the bottom navigation to be top element of the screen. That is still not here. Okay, what's happening? So where is this? Oh, that's the wrong bottom navigation. So it's this bottom navigation. We are gonna move up, and that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe we can get it up a bit. Nope, the previous position was better. Yeah, okay. I think we are much more spacious than the initial design. Things are less close. Oh, I think we forgot something. That's why. Oh, I think we gotta get this picker. So we have to pick the date. So in here, one thing we can add is the text, June, and this should be 14 and bolded. And then we should get our chevron left, chevron right, and we should both make these white. And let's see if we can center these, and let's reduce their distance. So we wanna get this around here, get this one around there, and we wanna get this just 2 pixels above. And let's check the distance. That's 1. So let's check the distance here. That's 8 pixels between here to here. 4, that's 12. So maybe auto width. So maybe 2 pixels here. 2 pixels here. That looks better. And that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna select all of these with Shift, Ctrl Alt G for framing, and I'm gonna name this date picker. And I am gonna center this in this. In here, let's see so a bit to the left. And I'm checking inside the frame. So maybe around here is good. And that looks pretty good. I like it. I actually like it. Okay. Again, we were much more spacious in this design, so our last element is going much more bottom, but it's also this starting, so that's 16. Maybe we can move this to 16 here, so maybe move it up. But then we wanna maybe get this a bit higher. So that's 812. That's 24. So maybe this one is pretty good. Yeah, that's better. I think that is it. And that is the tutorial, guys, on how to use Figma components and then variants to actually create this mobile app design. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you really like this video and you would like to hear more from me, I post twice on this channel. And so that if you want to get notification so that you can watch much more of my tutorials and learn Figma better or UX design better, please feel free to subscribe on the button there and have a fantastic weekend.